Dog is one of the few main characters in the game to not have any combat and AI. All of his combat are very over-the-top and exciting, but are all self-contained, scripted, playing out the same way every time. That sounds disappointing. However, it's a nice trade-off as he's been able to hurl objects through the air, rip things apart, and generally wreak havoc in a way that no one else can.
Early in the game's development, there was to be an emphasis on mankind's servitude and combat. Large, nightmarish factories were prototyped, but lacked entertaining gameplay and were therefore cut. At one point in the game's development, children were to be found working in such factories. But it was later decided that the citizens' reproductive cycle had been repressed for too long for any children to be left, and their absence became a minor, albeit poignant theme within the game.
This particular area serves several purposes. First of all, it's a recognizable scene from the game's opening, yet it's currently in a far different state. This shows how much the city has changed in Gordon's absence. Secondly, the citizens tearing down the Breencast monitor clearly shows the player what he or she is fighting for. The rebels taking their time to do this while the battle still rages sends an important message to the Combine and the player that the citizens are fighting to take back City 17. Finally, it provides a nice, safe, and open area to teach the player squad command mechanics.
When designing the various civilians, it was important that each person in each group have its own individual look and personality. Civilians on the coast or in City 17 needed to look unique from the resistance fighters. Since the player would be interacting with many citizen and resistance NPCs at once, it was important that the player recognize them as individuals rather than virtual clones.
The gravity gun is a later version of the fizz gun, a weapon with a similar appearance that was first publicly shown in a demo at E3 2003 and was also included in an infamous playable Half-Life 2 leak. It actually functioned quite differently from the gravity gun, projecting a blue, somewhat wobbly beam that would grab objects and hold them in midair. The beam's length could be changed by the player to bring the object closer or put it farther, and it could be used to place objects with precision. If any of this sounds somewhat familiar, that's because it has a unique fate. Living On is an important tool in Gary's mod, a popular mod that creates a sandbox environment within the Source engine and shares a lot of content with Half-Life 2.
Early in the game's development, Half-Life 2 is to have a much more Western style, most likely based in the United States. However, it was later decided that the game would be much more visually interesting with an Eastern setting. Eastern Europe has much more history, and it shows in its architecture. This collision of the old and the new created a more interesting contrast, and allowed the invasive Combine architecture to stand out more.
A theme, in essence, is an element that is repeated and is iterated upon many times in a work of art. This is exactly what Valve does when theming a level. A significant element is chosen, then repeated over and over throughout the level until it is clear what the level's theme is supposed to be. There are three sizes of objects within the game's world: large, medium, and tiny. First, each object is checked to make sure the level of detail is consistent, then the larger objects are placed into the world. These are objects like buildings and landmarks. Following that, smaller objects like trees and other ornaments are placed. Finally, trash and small decals like posters or graffiti are added, completing the level's look.
When creating the music for Half-Life 2, the game's composer, Kelly Bailey, created most of the music using computer software that simulated a sound studio. To start composing a song, he tried to think of a few words that describe the tone he wanted for the track. Phrases like fast action, suspense, quiet exploration, mystery, or slow, disturbing dark. As the track was iterated upon, it was important to continuously refer back to the original phrase, ensuring that the song would converge upon its intended feel.